guys, welcome back to Critical Flick, and we just had the release of Toy Story 4, so we thought it would be no better time than to rank all 21 Pixar films. So the way we came with our ranking is I made a list, Noelle made a list, we gave each movie number values, combined it together, and that's how we got our list. So number 21 is Cars 2. I think it is arguably the weakest film that Pixar's ever put out. It took some risks, but I think it fell a little flat, especially after the first film.
Yeah, the story definitely felt flat after the first film. The first film had this so much drive and energy throughout the whole one. This one just didn't live up to it.
Number 20 is The Good Dinosaur. This one, I have to say, I was excited going into it. I like dinosaurs, I'm really interested. And the CG in it, especially with the landscape, is incredible. But the story, just like Cars 2, just fell a little flat for me.
Yes, the scenery was absolutely beautiful in Good Dinosaur. It looks very realistic. It was like one of the first movies Pixar really reached out and, photorealism of the film. But the characters, there wasn't that emotion that drives all the other Pixar films, so that's why it's lower on our list.
All right, so number 19 is Finding Dory. Finding Dory, for me, it's one of those films that it took so long to come out, and the hype was there for so long for it to be made that I think it didn't reach that hype level. And a sequel to Finding Nemo had to be super warranted, and I didn't feel like this really warranted being after that film.
After Finding Nemo, it was such a great movie when it came out. Finding Dory just fell a little flat. Love Ellen DeGeneres as Dory. It's a great character. The story as a whole was a lot of the same.
Yeah, it had some good messages, but just not enough there. Number 18 is Monsters University. Again, this is another trend, at least for us, with the Pixar sequels, trying to live up to that original film. I think it was decent enough. It was cool seeing their history and going back and see how Mike and Sally ended up together. Seeing all the different monsters was really cool. But just like the last few on the list, the story just didn't feel warranted.
No, I definitely would have liked to have seen it go in the other direction where Boo's older and you're like, what's going to happen with Mike and Sully and how's that relationship, span out?
So number 17 is Cars 3. I do think that this film is better than the second film. Not quite as good as the first film. Had some interesting characters, the introduction of Cruz Ramirez, all that was really cool. Just, with the sequel thing, it just didn't live up to the original film.
Yeah, it didn't live up. It was definitely better than Cars 2. Cruz Ramirez was pretty good in it. Like, it was a good added character. But I felt like a lot of the other characters took a back seat in the film. And also, you can tell that Pixar was really using the photorealism with this nature that the cars are driving around, and it took it another level in that film.
All right, so number 16 is Incredibles 2. So Incredibles 2, like with the past few films, really incredible CGI, some of the best I've ever seen. And I did think that the story was interesting, but it felt so much like kind of a rehash of the first film, with the heroes have to go into hiding and then they come back out, and then it's a conflict of heroes versus, being controlled. It kind of had that samey thing.
Yes, it was the same type of movie. I like the introduction of more of all the characters as a whole. Like, you get to know Jack and his powers, and then you also, go through the struggles between Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, which is pretty good. But the villain is the parts in the movie where it falls for me. It's very predictable, and that's the only thing that I really take back from that movie.
Yeah, the twist wasn't great, but the family dynamic it really stole the show in this film. So number 15 is Brave, and this is the one Pixar film, for me at least, that feels so much like a Disney movie. It has, the princess going forward. It had that fantastical, Renaissance kind of style to it. I really like that. I think the animation is really cool. I think Merida's a really good character.
Yeah, Merida is a very strong, woman figure for young girls to, look at. And I just love the whole atmosphere of the movie. It was a different area for a Pixar movie to take place. And yeah,
just the magic of it was really cool. So number 14 is the original Cars. I think the original Cars is a great movie, honestly. I remember watching it back recently. It still holds up really well for me, at least. Really cool story. It's just like one of those quintessential pillars of Pixar.
Owen Wilson is Lightning McQueen. He's really good in it. I love Bonnie Hunt in it as well. That's the love interest in the movie. And you're introduced to all these great characters at Radiator Springs, and it's this whole new world. And it's a good movie.
And the introduction of Mater before he really wore his welcome. I really liked him as a supporting character in the first film. when he goes more into the forefront in the second film, it's when it loses me. So number 13 is Bug's Life. This movie is actually higher on my list. I think it's why it made it higher on here. We just actually watched this a couple months ago when we were down at Disney, and I forgot how much I love this movie. Hopper is an excellent villain. I think Flick is a really interesting character. The traveling bands of bugs are really interesting. It's one of those when, they're starting to hone their craft with 3D animation, and I think it was just a really cool movie.
It was a cool movie, and I feel like it got overshadowed because it came out like the same time another creature movie, Ants, came out. So I think it was just like a lot of bugs in one year. But I think Bug's Life, it's underrated. I think it's a pretty decent movie. Like he said, great villain. Hopper, I mean, he's menacing. He's scary. And Flick, he's like that character you just want to root for. So it's a good movie.
I just want to talk about one scene I really like in that movie. When they're in the fog and like the crickets are that's a really good scene. It shows some of those early almost horror elements that Pixar likes to throw into some of their movies. Mm-hmm. So number 12 is Coco. I know this is a little lower on our list than most people would have it, but it's still a really, really incredible movie. The visuals are just stunning, especially when he goes into the afterlife. I thought the story was really interesting. The music's really good. There's just a lot to like about this movie.
Yeah, like Brian said, the visuals in this movie, especially in the afterlife, are just absolutely beautiful. And it's just crazy that Pixar was able to create something like that. It's just something different. It looks like a painting in a movie to me.
Yeah, we actually just watched a video about the Pixar animation through the years just yesterday. And that scene where he first goes into the afterlife and he's on the bridge of all the leaves there. They used 8 million artificial lights to create that shot, and that's just insane to me that that's even something you can even do.
Yeah, but overall, it has a really great, like, heartwarming story about family.
All right, so number 11 is Inside Out. This movie is one of those really, really deep Pixar films. It's like the epitome of Pixar taking some really deep concept and putting it into a children's movie. The thought of, your emotions, how they affect you as you grow and you learn to work them together. And just the visuals are great. The cast is great.
Yeah, the cast is great. I relate to sadness. No, I'm kidding. Inside Out is very deep and emotional. And when I see Bing Bong and he's like fading away, that really struck me and reminded me of my childhood and, all the, imaginary characters you make as a child. And it's a very emotional movie.
Mm-hmm. So number 10 is Incredibles. I really love the first Incredibles. I think it's this high on the list mostly because of me. I think that it is one of the best superhero films. I think that the introduction of this kind of 50s noir style is so interesting. The way the movie's put together with the angular lines and just it has almost like a Watchmen feel to it. There's a lot for me to really enjoy about this movie. The villain is really interesting, having him kind of idolize Mr. Incredible and then having to try to defeat him and prove he's better than him. It's a really cool story. They did some really cool ideas that also called back to some like classic comic book storylines. So number 9 is Monsters, Inc. This is another one of those classic pillars of Pixar when they're really just pushing the boundaries of what 3D animation can be. Having Sully out there with his individual hairs and just the concept of monsters scaring children for energy and then realizing, we can do this a different way. Kind of people learning to adapt and create a better world.
I really like the relationship between Mike and Sully in the movie. It's a definitely great bond. The character, the villain, Randall, he's kind of sneaky and sly, and it's just a good overall dynamic.
So number 8 is WALLE. I absolutely adore WALLE. I think it is so visually impressive as a film. I love sci-fi, so this introduction of this blend between animation and sci-fi, how do you not love WALLE and Eva? It's just like, how do you not love that dynamic?
Yeah, they're great together, and it's also a great message about, taking care of our planet and basically, you can't have robots clean after us.
Yeah, just having, it's at the core of the movie, it is about, taking care of yourself, taking care of the universe, taking care of the earth, and it has some really important messages underlined with just a really cute story.
Yeah.
So, our number 7 is Toy Story 2. This is our lowest ranked Toy Story film. Still incredible, but I just think that you're going from the first film, which is so iconic and impressive, to the third film, which is so satisfying with the ending. It just falls in the middle there. It has some great messages. I love Jesse's story. There's the villain is pretty interesting with Stinky Pete.
Yeah, Jesse's story is the most touching moment in Toy Story 2. Anytime you hear that song and you see the hill with the tree, you know what's about to happen. Again, it's a good movie. Toy Story always knows how to knock it out of the park, and
just an incredible franchise. Mm-hmm. So number 6 is Finding Nemo. Again, another pillar in the Pixar franchise where we're seeing the introduction of underwater elements. I think the story of Marlin being, a single father, losing his wife early on, and being so worried about losing Nemo, and then he loses him, and then his dynamic with Dory, just great overall.
Yeah, Ellen DeGeneres definitely steals the show in Finding Nemo to me. She was just so funny. It was just such a funny character. Marlin and Dory's like relationship and how they start bonding, and for the hunt of Nemo, trying to figure out where he is. It's a good overall story about everybody learning like how they need to change. Basically, Marlin's very overprotective, and Dory's there to guide him along the way.
And just honestly, some great side characters and quotable moments. I mean, between Crush and Bruce and Nigel, there's so many cool characters in this movie. There's just so much to love for all ages. So number 5 is the newest film in the Pixar franchise, Toy Story 4. And I have to say, I was skeptical, like in our review going into this movie, because 3 is so good and ends so well. But I thought 4, really felt necessary on watching it. And I think it has some really good ending messages for Woody.
Yes, it definitely closed the chapter on Woody's like story, supposedly, but it was really good. The animation is out of this world. It's so realistic, and you have all your favorite toys together: Buzz, Woody, Bo Peep. I mean, they're just all there, and it's just a good story.
Yeah, and the one thing I think about more when I think about this movie is the introduction of Forky and that character. I love that character just because what it represents, what is a toy, this kind of deep, like, sentient idea of this movie that people always kicked around of how these toys think and what their function is and everything. I just thought that was interesting. They threw that out there because that's pretty deep to even try to comprehend that. So our number 4 is Up. Up is another incredible, heart-wrenching film. If you can get through that first couple minutes of that movie without getting teary-eyed, there's something wrong with you. Just that everything about it is just draws at your heartstrings, and just the relationship between, him and Russell. It's something special.
Yeah, the first 10 minutes of the movie is fantastic. It evokes all the emotion you could ever have in a movie, and the story is just great after that. You have Russell, and you got introduced to Kevin, Doug. I mean,
Yeah.
all the characters in a whole, they work so well together. Yeah, basically just about getting older. And
Yeah, it's about, moving on from a loss and finding comfort in a support system and people you would never expect to be friends with. Or there's so many nice things about the movie. All right, so our number 3 is Toy Story 3. Arguably the best ending of a trilogy of all time, in my opinion. The incinerator scene gets me every time. This movie is just so good. They end it so well. Lots of hug and bear, incredible villain.
yeah, they ended really well. Like, I thought that was it for Toy
Yeah.
Story series. And Andy's chapter and him, giving his toys to someone else and them going somewhere else. Another heartwarming story. I don't know what else more to say about Toy Story besides it this being really good.
Incredible. So number 2 is Ratatouille. I love Ratatouille, and that's why it's up here. This was actually my number 1 movie on my list. I think it is so interesting how the story is woven, and just the setting of Paris and having the chef aspect to it, just kind of having someone, a rat in this person's stance, wanting to follow their dreams against all insurmountable odds, finding the most unlikely of allies. The villain is interesting, the side story of Linguini and his father. There's just so many cool things to unpack with it. And our number 1 is the original Toy Story.
Toy Story is so iconic. The introduction of Woody and Buzz. I remember when I was a kid, I had all the toys from this movie. I marked my name at the bottom of their foot. It's just a great overall story. It's such an achievement, too, of the 3D aspects of the whole movie being that, and how much time and effort it took for them to make this movie, and to stem away from a lot of 2D animation.
Yeah, it's just such a heartwarming story, and just having Pixar, this is how we launched this empire of Pixar, and just having the fact that this movie, that at its core, you're kind of like, oh, it's the first, really good 3D animation film, but it's a really good movie. Buzz and Woody, their relationship's incredible. Andy, just resonating with that as a child, seeing it, we've seen it obviously when we were little kids when it first came out. It still holds up so well, and just iconic.
Yep.
So that was our ranking of the 21 Pixar films. Comment down below with your ranking. How do you feel about these movies? I'm always interested to see people's rankings because they can be so wildly different. So remember to put that down below. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.